Hello and welcome to this session. So in this session we're going to be looking at the different cabling equipment that we could come across when we are deploying networks in buildings and network infrastructure. Okay, so the first type of equipment that you could find are these RJ45s and RJ11s. So RJ45s are used to terminate Ethernet cables and basically have 8 positions and 8 conductors in place. Okay, remember that our Ethernet cable usually comes with 4 pairs of twisted cable. Okay, so each pair or each each conductor has a position to which it is supposed to get into these RJ45s. So it basically has a provision for that. In RJ11, these are basically used in telephones and basically have 4 positions and 4 conductors. Another type of equipment that we could come across is a crimper. A crimper is basically used to terminate Ethernet cables. When you want to join an RJ45 to an Ethernet cable, this is basically what you use to put in place the pair cables in place in the RJ45. Okay, so that is basically it when it comes to a crimper. The other type of tool that we could come across is a cable tester. A cable tester is used to check the type of termination made in Ethernet cables. Okay, it could be a crossover termination, which basically follows a coloring code rule, and straight through connections. So what is basically the difference between crossover and straight through connections? A straight through termination is made between unlike devices, while a crossover termination is made between like devices. Let's say you're connecting between a switch and a switch, you will basically use crossover. If you are connecting a switch to a router, then you basically do the straight through termination. And this cable tester is basically used to see if each conductor is in place in its position at RJ45. Now this is what we call a punch down tool, and basically this is used when you are trying to push a conductor into place. Okay, and you can see the end that has a little slit on it. That is what you use to hold down the Ethernet cable conductor, and you simply push it down either to a patch panel. Okay, this distribution RJ45s. Okay, these are found on walls. Okay, so this is basically what you use to push down into place the Ethernet conductors or wires. Now there is what we call a tone generator, and this is basically used to locate Ethernet cables during deployment. Let's take an example whereby you have so many Ethernet cables running through your network, and you basically need to locate where does this Ethernet cable go to. So what you basically do, there are 2 devices here. There is a Fox and a Hound. So you basically fix your Fox. You take the Ethernet connection and plug in the Ethernet to the Fox or the tone generator. Okay, and you move around with the Hound to where the Ethernet cables are extending to. And when you come across the wire which is tapped into the tone generator, generally the tone hound will start generating some noise. This helps you identify which Ethernet cable runs to where. Okay, so that is basically the simple use of a tone generator. There is what we call a multimeter, and it is used to check for breaks of connection in Ethernet cables. Okay, this could also be found in other application, in electrical application. So you look for breakages in circuit, but in networking we look for break of connection in the Ethernet cables. okay, and also can be used to measure the voltage of a device. There's what we call a bandwidth speed tester, and this is used to check both upload and download speeds on a network. Okay, so it basically shows you the upload speeds and the download speeds in your network, and these are basically websites that you can search for and basically look at the speed in your network. There's what we call a cable tap. This is used to manually tap into networks. So what you generally do is go and unplug an Ethernet cable, or you cut it, terminate it, and plug it into this cable tap. Is basically an input. You put the Ethernet cable on one side and you plug another Ethernet cable on the other side, and you're able to see what traffic is going through that Ethernet cable or that interface. Okay, so that is what basically a cable tap is used for. There is what we call a snip or a cutter, and this is used to cut wire Ethernet cables while terminating. You don't want uneven termination of these Ethernet cables, so this is what you basically use when cutting those conductors and putting them in place and aligned. Okay, when you are terminating using RJ45 cables, so they are basically straight such that one conductor is not longer than the other. So that is the basic use of a snip or a cutter. There's what we call a cable stripper, and this is used to remove the insulation on Ethernet cable. So what you basically do is plug in your Ethernet cable to one side of this cable stripper, and you press it in such a way that the insulation will just be cut and pulled out of the Ethernet cable, making it exposed or exposing the conductors that are inside an Ethernet cable. So that is the basic use of a cable stripper. Now there is what we call a port scanner, and an example of a port scanner is Nmap, and it is used to analyze a network and determine which hosts are up in a network and what ports is each host running on that network, what ports are open. So that is the basic use of a port scanner. There is what we call a spectrum analyzer. Now when you're dealing with fiber cables, there is the concept of lambda, or the wavelength, the different wavelength that you're using to communicate. Okay, because we are using light here. So what you do when you want to analyze each the traffic of each wavelength in a fiber cable, you connect it to a spectrum analyzer, and you basically analyze or have a look at the signal strength of each wavelength in the fiber cable. So that is it when it comes to a spectrum analyzer. Now there is what we call a fusion splicer, and this is used to terminate fiber cables. This one basically uses heat to terminate fiber cables or join fiber cables. There is the other one which is manual, but it basically have the same working mechanism. So they are used to terminate fiber cables. And I believe that is it. I have covered most, if not all, of the equipment that we can come across when we are generally deploying a network in a building. So thank you guys for your time. See you in the next video.